Let me show you another way in which we can use kernel density and actually use it on a map that is currently just a set of polygons, census tracts in this case. And I'll show you an example of how this has been used. This is from the P-Town Foundation. One of the things they do is they focus their energies on the children's corridor in the Denver metro area. And it's right along I-70. And get this to cooperate. What you can see is what they've pulled out that particular area, and then they've looked at vulnerable children. And here they define vulnerable children as births to teen mothers or to mothers with low education, and then also Denver and Aurora public school students participating in free or reduced lunch. So in many ways, it's a composite measure of vulnerable populations. And they created this hotspot analysis in lieu of a sort of standard map shaded by graduated colors along census tract lines. So how would one go about doing something like that when you just have a series of census tracts? And again, if I were to open up this attribute table, we have data in here, and if I scroll all the way across, you'll see some of this new data. We actually have the estimated numbers of individuals within each census tract that are below poverty. You might be looking at, if you had a measure, and census has this, on the number of people who are linguistically isolated, who don't speak the dominant language in a particular area and things like that. So what you could use is that particular number to weight each census tract. But how do you move from census tracts to a kernel density type map that really relies on points? So we have polygons, but kernel density relies on points. And you can do hotspot analysis with polygons. I just don't particularly find them as appealing as the kernel density. So again, to do that, the first thing we need to do is pull up our ARC toolbox. I'm going to close the spatial analysis. And in order to work with points, we need to convert these polygons into points. And we can do that through the data management tools. And then we can go to the features, and what we want to do is feature to point. So each census tract is a feature, and we want to turn that into a point. So double click there. The input feature will be our tracts. The output feature, make sure you know where things are saving. And you know who you are, the people who tend to save in default settings. So here we're just going to call it DA tracts points or something like that. And go ahead and hit OK. And it's doing its job down here, as you can see. And what you can see is that it took the geometric center of each census tract and placed the point there. And we'll notice that these points actually have all of the data that were in the census tracts. Okay, so essentially we have the census tracts all collapsed into the very geographic center point of themselves with all of the corresponding data. So now we can go back to the toolbox and go to Spatial Analyst Tools, go to Density and Kernel Density, and let's go ahead and do input. Those are our points. It's reading those because kernel density reads points, not tracts or polygons. Okay. And then we need to tell it, what's the population field, and let's do households, female-headed households with children. That's a rather common demographic of concern in sociology. So that each of our points will be weighted by the number of female-headed households with children in that particular dot, or as it's representing that census tract. And then we'll make sure that it's saving out to where we want it to. So let's just call this Denver Aurora DA female-headed household kids. And let's go with, I'll skip the default for a second. Let's just bump that up again, because you see the e to the -2. You wouldn't want to get rid of this and just replace it with 2. That would dramatically change the distances it's dealing with. So let's go up to 2.4, and hit OK. And again, you can kind of play with these, create one, see what it looks like, go back and change that sort of search distance that it uses. Okay, let me make sure I'm clicked over here on the left, and then I can move this up. Alright, so then double click, symbology, switch it to 7, switch it to my favorite color ramp. Let's go ahead and do the bilinear interpolation, and let's do the transparency at 35. Hit OK. Let's get rid of that top color, so just single click, properties, and then we can make that hollow. So maybe, and we also want to get rid of the points, we don't need those. So again, it shows where those higher concentrations, those clusters, those hotspots of populations characterized by female-led households with children. Again, maybe this is too aggressive of a map, so maybe we'd want to go back to the default and try to bring things in a little bit to be a little more specific, because this is taking up a lot of space. But that's one way in which you can start with polygons like census tracts, convert them into singular points at each of their centers, and then use those points to create hotspot analyses. Okay. Hope that's helpful.